All right, happy Wednesday to you. Zane here, and beautiful day on the Gold Coast. Just wanted to send a short message today. I've been getting a lot of emails the past week and messages from people who just want to know what I'm doing in this current environment of uncertainty that we're living in. And so I just thought I'd put together a short video I've written 7 things down here that I just want to share with you. Tips, pointers. If you're already under control and you don't see that there's a problem of any kind, then I guess this video is not for you. But for those of you who don't really know where to begin and are having trouble kind of deciphering all of the information out there and who it is to listen to and what to believe, then I guess this video is for you guys. So the first thing I'll say, point number 1, is that most of us feel intuitively that things aren't right. And, we've all seen the protests. We all understand the situation with the medical experiment going on. And, the more that the propaganda machine sounds their horn and really ups the ante with these forceful messages, the more that we should be concerned. And I know for one, myself, I really don't watch channel 2, 7, 9 or 10 at all. But every now and then I just flick through the TV. And the other night I happened to do it when The Voice was on, because my mum said, hey, you got to go and listen to this amazing singer. And anyway, I jumped on the TV, and what was really interesting was just when the ad time came on, ad after ad, it was basically the medical establishment, big pharma. And so you've got to ask yourself the question, the propaganda machine, where do they get their advertising dollars? They're funded from that establishment. And obviously because of that, everything that comes out of their mouth is bought and paid for. So we need to keep that in mind, because most people really don't put much thought or energy into the news anymore, or what they're being taught. They don't really question it. And I think that's a big mistake, particularly in this new world that we're living in. So you have to be really astute at what you listen to and finding information that makes sense, so you can make informed decisions that are right for you. So step number 1 is to get educated. Now, if you haven't yet downloaded this free report, it's on the Global Health Organization website, but it's a 75-page report, which is basically, as it says, an assessment of COVID-19 and the failed global health policies of the WHO, the World Health Organization, which has a dangerous level of influence from big pharma. So step number 1 is really to get educated. And in that report, 75 pages, so it is a bit of reading, but it does a fantastic job, I believe, of really opening your eyes to the medical experiment that's going on and what's behind it, why a virus was chosen as the Trojan horse, or as the facade for the coming Great Reset, the financial reset. All right. So, because if you don't already know, this fraud that's been perpetrated on the masses, there's a reason for it, and there's a reason why they've chose this as the way to distract everybody from the real issue, which is that we are built on a house of cards, a debt-based system that really has been perpetuated over the last 50 years, since 1971, when President Richard Nixon took the world off the gold standard in 1971. Since that time, we've been floating on a fiat currency system, which is basically backed by nothing, and a system whereby the government can kind of manipulate the currency and choose at will, the money supply. And in the last 12 months, we've seen $6 trillion worth of money printing in the US alone. And obviously a lot of that in Australia as well, to prop up small businesses and corporations that have, fallen prey to these lockdowns and all of this. And so, my recommendation is that if you haven't already, to do a little bit of homework, and YouTube is a fantastic resource just to understand a little about the history of money and the global financial system and everything that's transpired for the past 50 years, which is obviously encompasses my entire lifetime and probably, many of you listening to this. So, we don't really know any different, and we've kind of been brought up in this debt-based system where it's easy come, easy go, and we've never really understood what it means to have a financial system that's actually backed by something tangible, as it once was, which of course was gold. There's a long history as to why Nixon took the US off the gold standard, how the gold standard became the standard originally, and then the US chose to take themselves off it. But it really is the source of our problems now, because we have more debt in the system than we've ever had, and it'll never be paid back. And so they have to usher in a new world order, a new system to basically hit clear, cancel, delete, and reset. And the reset's not going to be pretty, because millions and millions of people around the world who are totally asleep and not aware of what's going on, they're going to be absorbed into this new system, which is really all about tyranny, control, universal basic income, drip feeding the public, being totally dependent on the government. You're going to be under constant surveillance. You won't be able to buy a loaf of bread without them knowing. They'll be able to debit your account for your taxes at any time, speeding fines, parking fines, you name it. Social scoring. If you're a good citizen, you get more points. If you play up or you do a misdemeanor or something, you're going to be down the chain as far as the social score goes. And all this sounds crazy, but it's all part of the system that's being rolled out right now. So number one is get educated. Get educated about the fraud of the virus and the medical experiment. And number two, to get educated on the state of the financial system, because things are not good. And what's coming, many pundits are of the view that it's going to be a 1930s style Great Depression, which none of us have experienced, but it will not be pretty. And apparently 2008 was an absolute dress rehearsal for what's coming down the pipe. So what can we do? Once we're educated, we know there's a problem. The next step is to just take a few steps that can, I guess, create a little bit of financial autonomy for us, which is really important. The one thing I'll say is that, before I share these few tips with you, is that, just through observation, talking to people, getting a sort of feel for the sentiment on social media. I know people are exhausted. They're exhausted from the last 18 months, and rightly so, because it's just been overwhelming, the amount of crap that we've all had to deal with. But I also know that that's part of their agenda, is to just wear everybody out so that they can just bring this thing in and everybody's just going to go with it and cop it, those that aren't awake. So I just think right now, now's the time for us not to, let our guard down and to just submit. Now's the time for us to stand up and be strong in the mind, be strong in the physical body, because they're both connected. And just to create some resilience around your mindset and your emotions and your physical frame is just so important, because those who are lazy and passive and disconnected, they're just going to be ill-equipped to deal with a total shake-up to society as we know it. All right. So step number one is to get right with your wellness, get right with your physical body, get right with your emotional fitness. That's the most important thing, because from that place, you can start to be proactive about taking some steps to be a lot more resilient and prepared. Number two is to get some cash out of the bank if you haven't already. The banking system is going to be at risk. We have a system called fractional reserve banking, which basically means that the banks can do a thing called bail-ins. So if everybody who has money in the bank panics and goes to the bank to try and withdraw their money, ATMs or through the bank tellers, it's not there. It's not there. The money you think is there is not there because of this fractional reserve banking system, which is written into the small print of deposits, which actually don't belong to you. They actually belong to the bank once they are the custodians of your money. So if the shit really hits the fan and we have a financial Armageddon, so to speak, you want to know that you've got access to some cash, a good amount of cash in that environment. So if you haven't already, make sure and you've got some surplus cash, get it out of the bank and store it in a very safe place as a backup if required. Get some precious metals. Silver and gold have been regarded as money for over 5,000 years, and we haven't heard a lot about it in recent decades because we haven't really needed to rely on it. But in times of crisis, they're definitely something that you want to have as backup, as some form of security. Okay, and you don't need to buy, 10, 20, 30, 40 ounce bars. You can just buy little coins in packs of 10 1 ounce coins. But I just recommend that you get a hold of at least some silver. Look up a local bullion dealer in your area and get a hold of some silver at the very least, and some gold if you can manage it as well. Even if it's $500 worth, $1,000 worth, the value of those assets, hard assets that are outside the system, cannot be underestimated in a time of crisis. So I'd highly recommend to get your hands on some silver and gold if you can manage it. Number 4 is to get out of debt. Okay, particularly personal credit card debt, anything with massive interest rates attached to it. Start there. Then, once you've got rid of any personal debts that you have, if you have the means to do that, the next step would be to, obviously attack your home loan as best you can if you are able to do that. Because again, there's no telling what could happen to this debt-based society if we have a massive financial crisis. I've heard all sorts of different things that can happen. All I'll say on this video is that to be focused on just minimizing any debt that you've got, so that the banks have as little leverage on you as they possibly can have. That would be my advice there. If you can relocate, at least get out of the densely populated cities. There's a lot of people talking about this. It's the reason why, particularly in the US, people are fleeing the likes of LA and California and New York, and they're just getting out of those big, highly densely populated cities. Not a good place to be if there's crime and financial hardship going on. So really important to consider that if you can. 2 more things. One is, if you're not already considering the new digital asset world that's being built right now, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, that kind of a thing, I'd really encourage you to, at the very least, start educating yourself about that. Because in the same way that the internet came in the late 90s and a lot of people fobbed it off and didn't think that e-commerce was going to take off, a lot of people are overlooking digital assets and cryptocurrencies. And all the while, all of the infrastructure is being built right now, and it's going to be the new system. Decentralized currencies, blockchain, all of these kinds of things are going to be a very big part of the global economy moving forward. And the thing to realize is that certain assets, particularly Bitcoin, are outside of the system. They're decentralized, and you basically become your own bank. And again, in a global financial crisis, you want to be able to have that autonomy if you can. So a lot of people have kind of overlooked it. They're not interested. They think it's a scam. They think it's going to blow over, and that's a big, big mistake. I've been studying it for 4.5 years now, and I'd highly encourage you to educate yourself. I can point you in the right direction if you need, but start learning about that stuff now. And then there's the seventh point that I've written down is to know your rights. Because of all the propaganda out there and the narrative that's being pushed, a lot of people becoming subservient. They don't really understand what's law and what's not. So I would highly encourage you guys to access some of the available documentation that are in amongst a few groups online that just give you some clarity around what your rights are as a human being in a free country, because you're not being told that on the mainstream news. Okay, so we have rights and we are protected by certain covenants. I'd encourage you to jump onto anrnews.com, headed up by Jamie McIntyre. There's a lot of documentation on that site. Also follow Jamie on Telegram, Jamie McIntyre on Telegram. So it's anrnews.com, Australian National Review, and put your email in there, and you've got access to this new media company that is infiltrating all of the major centres of Australia now, and is trying to stand up to the might of the mainstream news in giving people the truth. The other group I would highly recommend is the Australia Project, headed up by some ex people from the police force and other government backed bodies who are fed up with what's going on, and they are basically in a similar vein. They're rolling out all of these petitions, all of these letters to Big Pharma, the medical industry, doctors, to MPs, government, just to basically alert them to the fact that the public's had enough, and we're not going to stand for it. And again, they've got lots of resources there that you can tap into as documentation as well to know your rights. And then, the other thing to keep in mind is that next year we have a federal election. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But I think you and I would agree that it's becoming increasingly difficult to trust the established parties in this country, whether it's Liberal or Labor. And so the United Australia Party, backed by Clive Palmer, has raised around $250 million. I think Clive is pumping into the campaign, and headed up by Craig Kelly. And I think it's Australia's only chance of upholding our freedoms as a nation. So if you're not already a member of the United Australia Party, jump onto their website, enter your email, and make sure you're on board with that as well. And it's not about politics. It's about who you can trust, and it's about ensuring that we have a free country for ourselves and our kids moving forward. So anyway, a lot to take in there, I know, but I just wanted to get that off my chest. A few tips there. Take from it what you will, even if you just do one or two of those things. And of course, just remember to just stock up on a bit of food and water as well, because you just don't know how this could all play out. So it's just prudent to set aside 30, 60 days worth of long-term storage food if you can as well. Anyway, that's enough out of me for today. Again, I hope you got some value from that. Reach out to me if you need to be pointed to any particular resources. But like I said, anrnews.com, the Australia Project on Telegram, and become a member of the United Australia Party. It'd be really important, I think, for you to start there. Have a great day, and I'll see you really soon. Cheers.